Hello, everybody, and welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today is Tuesday, the 23rd of June, 2020, and thank you guys so much for joining me. Hopefully, everybody can see and hear me okay. I had to make a lot of adjustments to the equipment yesterday. When I have a guest or I make a change, there's a lot of things that had to be changed, especially with the audio going to two microphones, and hopefully I've got everything put back the way it should be. So bear with me as I make a little fine-tune adjustments here and there. Ryan said he was going to send me a Manfrotto tripod head the other day, and it arrived today. That was quick. So these little bad boys are like 120 bucks, and what it does is it sits between the camera and the tripod, and it allows for a smooth control of tilting the camera up, down, left, and right. I've got some old videos with an old rickety tripod that creaked and was never quite level, and it was, you know, back in the day, it's like a $20 tripod. Now I'm a $120 tripod with a $120 tripod head with a $2,500 camera sitting on top. So come a long way, and it's great to learn this media production side of things and to have these new experiences and furthermore to find products that are meeting my needs. In this tripod head, I need one for every tripod. So I want the same tripod head on all of them so the cameras all use the same shoe and then they can be moved around without worrying about which parts go where. So Ryan, thank you for the tripod head. It'll definitely be used very soon here. I've got the three cameras that I ordered all in use now, not the way I was originally planning. My sister's making some original content for the channel, so she's got one of the camcorders with the microphone, the tripod head, all of it. My second studio, which is still under construction, if you will, being improved upon. Not ready quite yet for broadcasting, but there's the other tripod camera. That's all three of them, with the one here. And now I don't have any spillers. That's all right. Everything's good. Everything is good. I'm very happy. It's a good day, and thanks you guys for joining me today. We're going to continue where we left off yesterday, where Mitch was with us, and we're building this second computer for Mike Smith. And Mike is so happy with the computer I built for him, and it means a lot to me to make Mike happy, right? Because Mike is dealing with, he's dealing with corporations and FINRA standards, and what he's doing is very, very particular, and computer has to work, right? Everything Mike does assumes the computer works. It's the software, the configuration, or viruses, or security, things like that, where Mike steps in. So it's important that Mike has a computer that exceeds what he's accustomed to, because he has a level of what he thinks is fast or what he thinks is reliable based on these Dell machines that his corporate clients order. And, he's not a build-it-yourself guy. He used to be back in the day, but he's not touched that in more than 20 years. So being able to demonstrate to him the difference between a Dell and what you can build yourself, with the money saving that it also brings with it, the reliability, the pride in workmanship that exists on a home build, and then for him to see that and value it, it's like the best compliment ever. When somebody comes in, and I want to emphasize this because I don't think people really think about what their opinion means to somebody else. If you're a complete stranger, or if a complete stranger walks up to you and has something critical to say about you, you're probably going to be defensive. More than likely, it isn't going to hurt your feelings. It's going to upset you. Like, who are you? And what gives you the right to judge me? And why do you think I care what you think? But then you have people, in real life. You have your friends, you have your family. And when the friends or family that you look up to or that you love and that you respect, when they have something critical to say, that hurts, right? And it's amazing to me the number of people who think that you should care about their opinion when they haven't even taken so much as a moment to explain to you who they are and why what they say should be heard, what makes them worth listening to. And the internet is rife with this. It's just noise. It's like static. And I hope you guys will think about that. You see some social injustice and you really want to speak out against somebody in particular, but you don't know that person. I don't really see the point of it. I don't know why you think the person you're writing to, who doesn't know you and has no idea who you are, would care less what you have to think, right? On the other hand, taking the time to perhaps introduce yourself, explain what qualifies you to have this opinion before offering it, would certainly go much further in being heard. So I hope some of you get the message. I've had some pretty critical folks come at me, and then they get angry when I blow them off, and I'm angry that they came at me and I don't even know who they are. So that's just not productive. Nobody's getting any smarter and nobody's accomplishing anything. So I think if you're sincere about wanting to accomplish something, I think the first thing you've got to do is convince the other person you don't know why they should listen to what you have to say before you say it. Something to think about. That's my philosophy for today. So knowing Mike and knowing how particular Mike is, when Mike says he likes it, that's the best compliment ever. And when he says he wants to order another one, that's the only way that makes the compliment, the original compliment, that's the only way you can top the original compliment, right? Madi orders a computer and he likes it so much, he orders a second one, he orders a third one, he orders a fourth one. In business, there are people who say nice things, right? There are people that'll say, wow, that's the best computer I've ever had. You say, wow, thank you. It means a lot to me. And everybody's happy. But then when that customer calls you back and says, I need another one, the best compliment in business you can ever get. I'm telling you, I don't care what your business is. If you serve somebody some food at a restaurant, they're like, that's the best meal I've ever had. Bring me a second helping. The first compliment is that's the best meal I ever had. That's what you're going for, hopefully. Bring me a second helping is just, well, icing on the cake. Just keep that metaphor rolling. All right, guys, so let me tell you what's been going on here. I got, last we left this system yesterday, I've got Windows 10 installed on it, right? I went ahead and downloaded all the updates to Windows 10, and Mike sent me his Windows 10 activation code. Mike doesn't need to buy Windows 10. He sells it, right? You understand? So he doesn't need to buy it from me. So Mike's provided me the key. It's activated. I've got the Samsung Magician software installed and the Samsung NVMe driver installed. And I went through the apps and removed, Candy Crush and the stuff I've shown you that I didn't use the debootloader. I just manually removed some of the apps and put the latest VLC on there. There's probably a little bit more I would do for a regular client, but Mike knows how he wants his system. So I don't want to do too much because it'll probably be undone anyway. He's going to do it and configure it. He's fully capable. He knows how. And so that's just a habit I just do that for everybody. So I'm going to try to consciously be aware I don't have to do as much for Mike. He's fully capable, and like I said, he's probably going to undo some of what I do to his preference. Like I threw the Edge browser on there, the new one. I don't know if he wants it or not, but I thought, I'll put it on there for him. Probably wasted my time. If he wants it, he knows how to get it. We give a couple of shouts out here before we get started. Let's see, Sherry McFarland, Oris Team, Jeffrey, Gabriel Granados, Stealth Mode, Sharon Idle, Rick 03038, D, Morgan, Jacob J, Patrick Russo, Mark Baggett, Chris Helsing at Goblin IT, Jacob, I mentioned that, John R and Jacob J, Ed Schwartz and Paul Cumber and Stefan C. And hello as well to George Z and Daniel Sprouse, Edwin Ojeda, John F. Catherine Anna Hauserman's in the chat there. Joseph Panariello. And Paul O'Brien had contributed €2. Hey, Paul, thank you for that. He says, have a Coke and relax. I can't relax yet. I got a lot on my plate. You'll notice yesterday we were never interrupted with any package deliveries, and still no package deliveries. On the one hand, that's fine, because if what did arrive as it was originally scheduled, it would just be sitting. I can't do anything with the parts I've got coming in until I do this first. So there's no time to relax. I can hopefully get this done, and ideally, the parts I'm expecting will come in before Thursday, which they are scheduled. They are scheduled to arrive at the latest on Thursday. So hopefully that doesn't change again. Amazon's been really, really bad with, well, I don't even know that it's Amazon. I think it's UPS with meeting any delivery dates. It's the worst I've ever seen it. I've never even seen holidays this bad before. Some things arrive just like they're supposed to, business as normal, and other things are unexpectedly delayed at the last minute, as if they didn't even know that was going to happen. They couldn't have predicted it, but yet it's happening all the time. So they're apparently optimistic. I don't know how else to explain it, but I'm excited for what's coming up, what's arriving. It's I think going to make some good content here. And let's see, what else have I missed? Rain One Full contributed $5 Canadian. He says, happy birthday. Hey, thank you, Rain One. Today actually is, for the record, my birthday, and thank you for spending it with me. It beats everybody driving in front of my house in a parade and having a drive-by party. This is much better. Rick Hubbard has contributed £3 as well. Thank you, Rick. So Paul, Rick, Rain One, or Ryan, thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. Thanks to all my friends in blue here for joining me today. And hopefully we'll be able to turn some more people blue during the broadcast today. I see Bordura is in the chat room. Hey, Bordura. As well as our good friend Tony Wallow. And Michael Dane. Michael Dane says, happy birthday. Have a Coke on a Dane. And he's contributed $5. Thanks, Michael. You're the man. And I appreciate all the happy birthdays, guys. I've spent almost half of the day today just hitting reply in Facebook messages, email messages, and phone text messages. And be careful what you wish for. It's pretty awesome, but at the same time, I feel an obligation to say thank you to everybody who reached out, because it's pretty cool. It is pretty cool. All right, so let me get to work. How about that? Where we're at, as I mentioned, with the system, everything is the same as we left it, with the exception of some software configuration that I've done. I've not formatted and partitioned the second drive yet. I have not hooked up the DVD drive yet. So like I said, it's all pretty much just as we left it. Jeremy Kramer just contributed $5, says, happy birthday, Carrie. Here's for a can or two of Coke. And Daniel Griswold has contributed $5 and says, happy birthday, Carrie. Right on. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate that very much. And of course, to Mitch as well for his help yesterday. We got a pizza after the show, and it was a long day, but a good day. And Rick Hubbard with a 20-pound contribution says, happy birthday. Is that one more gray hair I see? I hope so, because the alternative is no hair at all, so I'll take the gray ones. And Richard Bogan contributes $20 and says, happy birthday, Mr. H. Right on. Thanks, you guys. All right. Let me see if I can get some work done. Let me work. I think at this point, what I can do now is put the graphics card in. Now we've got the GeForce GTX 1650. Isn't this the one Mitch and I did the that we did the product shot? Let me see. I think this is it. Nothing's happening. Am I not connected? Let's try that again. Huh. 1650 GeForce Play. All right, so that's the card I'm holding right here. And the reason we got this card, Mike is not a gamer. I promise you, he's not going to become one. He's more interested in making money. So in doing so, he needs multiple monitors hooked up. And on the back of this motherboard, there is only one HDMI connector. Some motherboards will give you multiple video out opportunities, like there might be a DVI and a display port, like sometimes two, sometimes three. And if it came with two or three, that'd be great. Unfortunately, it only has the one, and Mike needs to hook up multiple monitors. So we just needed a decent enough card that would do that. And this is way overkill. I know that. It's way overkill. But Mike will never complain that you've given him too much. And we could have put in a 2080 Ti. No, he would have complained about the noise. That would not have been a good solution. So this should keep everything quiet while still providing way more power than he needs, and that he can grow into if his needs change. Daniel Pexton contributed $2. He says, happy birthday. Now you can work. Oh, thanks, Daniel. And Solo has contributed $20, and he says, happy actual birthday. And more Mitch is more better. Well, I'm sure Mitch will be glad to hear that. I mean, I agree. It's been a long time since I'd seen him, and I was obviously in a very silly mood yesterday, which I would only be in if I was happy. So that's always a good thing. All right, so for the installation of the graphics card, I need to remove two of the rear PCI slot covers. So I'm going to grab my cordless driver. And usually it's the second and third one that have to be removed. I always forget on these brand new Corsair cases that they've changed something in their manufacturing where none of these screws are tight. So normally if I never touch the screw, I don't check it. But these are all loose, every single one of them from the factory. And every Corsair 200R I've been receiving all this year have all been shipped to me that way. I don't know why. So I have to make a mental note to remember to check those and make sure they're tight, because I wouldn't want them to vibrate loose in shipping. This is going all the way to the East Coast, and so we don't, there's a lot of potential for vibration as it travels via a truck. It's not going by air, it's going by truck. And if the screws vibrate out and start bouncing around in there, it can create damage. So it's just something I never used to have to do. They used to come tight, and I don't know why they're loose now, but it's consistent. So this is the GeForce GTX 1650. Now, normally you wouldn't see me use a card of this caliber because I think the 1660 Ti is a better deal, but that's assuming you want it for budget gaming. For somebody who just wants to add a couple extra monitors and is still doing some video production with regards to when Mike goes live on Twitch TV and does his Mike Tech Show podcast, he's using some production, some of which is video, which again, at this time isn't requiring much. So this is more than he needs and is something he can grow into for quite some time. He won't have to upgrade anything anytime soon. So we're going to use the top slot. Always use the top slot for the graphics card. We'll make sure that the catch is in the open position, the catch or the latch. And we line the graphics card up with the slot. Before you put any pressure on it, you want to make sure that it lines up correctly and will seat properly. See there, I was pushing it in a little too early and it got below the slot instead of in the slot. In order to get this to line up with the slot, I kind of have to push it this way towards the back of the case. And then I see it start to slide in. And that's where I let it go. Now I can use some muscles and push it with some force and hopefully hear that little catch there, you know, that little plastic clip on the end. I want to hear that close and lock the card in. There it is. And now I can take those two screws that I had just removed and put them right back in to secure the card. Like so. And it appears we don't have to add any power cables to this graphics card. I was thinking, you know, I'm so used to higher end graphics cards, they always require power, but I have forgotten they make graphics cards that don't require power. I'm like, wait, where's the power connector at? Oh yeah, all right. I just want to see if there's anything else we need out of this box. Oh, there's a driver disc. All right, so all this stuff, the documentation and these PCI slot covers, throw that right up in the box there. The rest of this is to the recycle bin. Now what I'm going to do is remove, there's these little dust covers on the back of the graphics card. And I don't want Mike to accidentally plug into the motherboard graphics. However, I'm going to leave motherboard graphics turned on, so Mike can have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 monitors if he wants to. We need the HDMI port, so that's display port, that's HDMI, and I'm going to take this little dust cover and I'm going to plug up this HDMI so that it's not available to him to use unless he has to think about it, right? I want him by default going to this card. When you give a customer, Mike's not your ordinary customer, but when you give a customer a system that has, you know, let's say we added a sound card, then they don't know where to plug in their sound, the one built into the motherboard, or they don't know the difference. Back in the day, motherboards would have like a 10 megabit internet Ethernet card, and then we would add a gigabit Ethernet card. And then sure enough, the customer would say, hey, the new computer you built me is real slow. And you find out they plugged their cable in. I used to have offices, and they would move the computer. They'd move an employee from one office to the next. And when they plugged it back in, they'd plug into the wrong ports. Say, hey, the network doesn't work because I disabled it in the BIOS. So what I learned to do was to just buy the RJ45 ends and crimp them down with nothing in them, and then plug it into the hole, and then the customers know that hole is not available. And customers don't think about it. They don't, you know, they don't think there's going to be two places that'll fit, or if there is, it won't matter, like USB. And so over time, I have learned, you know, put those dust covers in, plug any additional holes you don't want the customer to use, to avoid unnecessary and completely avoidable support calls that are just a waste of time for everybody involved. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to plug it back in, turn it back on, and make sure this new graphics card works okay. And we can continue with, let's see, we got to put the driver on there. And, oh, we've got to run Prime 95. We've got to bench this thing to make sure that it's going to be running like it's supposed to. So the keyboard and mouse are still plugged in. There's the monitor, power, that's all we need. Let's see what happens. Turn this on, and let me switch over to that input right there. I suppose we should see if there's a new BIOS available. I think we should do that right now. But that means I have to plug it into the network, doesn't it? So I guess I wasn't ready after all. I got to get a network cable. I guess I'm going to need that to download the video driver anyway. All right. So I've got my giant Ethernet cable here, my go-to standby for things like this. And we'll plug it in up there. And then I'll plug it in back here. Okay. Okie dokie. So again, this is a Z390 Aorus Pro Wi-Fi. And if I want to determine what BIOS I currently have and if a newer BIOS is available, I've had this motherboard in inventory for about 4 months, so I think there's probably a new BIOS. If I had just received it in the mail, given the constant shortage of parts, it seems like a lot of parts I'm getting now have not been in inventory very long. They're almost going immediately from the manufacturer right to the consumer. So if you've bought a part recently, a motherboard, it probably, or anything like a Samsung SSD, any SSD, probably has the latest firmware on it. The BIOS probably has, the motherboard probably has the latest BIOS on it, especially if you're buying some of the newer stuff, like a Z490, obviously should have the latest if you just got one. Same with an X570. The higher end boards should certainly have the latest BIOSes on them, but you should still check just to be sure. And let's take a look here. I've got to go full screen so I can see. That's better. So I've got this program called CPU-Z. You'll see I've copied it off my flash drive here to the desktop. And if I execute this, it's a portable application. It doesn't require any installation. Oh, and the NVIDIA software was downloading in the background there, but it's not the latest version of the NVIDIA driver. So we're still going to do that. Don't let that fool you. That's just Windows 10 doing in the background what most people don't know how to do for themselves. But we're going to check all that. That's the point of my channel. You don't have to rely on Windows 10 to, provide you with everything you need. You can verify that you have the latest and greatest. So we click up here on mainboard, and it says we're running BIOS version F10. And what I'm going to do, I'll just pull up the Edge browser here, and let's go to Google. And I'm going to type in the name of the board, which is Z390 Aorus Pro Wi-Fi. And the first link that comes up is this gigabyte.com. That's the one I want. And you'll see it says service and support up here, and then it says support over here. Well, this is generic service and support, and this is specific support for the product page that you're on, and every motherboard manufacturer follows the same process or the same layout. MSI does it, Asus does it, ASRock does it. They've got the generic support up on the top, and then the specific, there's two support links. You'd think that was specific to a manufacturer because it's weird, but they all do it. So I think they're copying each other. I don't know who the first one was to start it, but be aware of it. So we're going to click on the lower support option here. And when I click on that, you'll see for downloads, we're going to scroll down. It says these are audio downloads, chipset downloads. There's BIOS right there. And I've got F10, which was from June. Then there was F11 and then F12C. I can skip anything between what I have and what is the latest. Just go right to the latest one, unless it specifically says in the description that you need to have a minimum BIOS version before you can install this. In most cases, you don't have to have a minimum BIOS. Sometimes you do, but you'll see it in the notes. So I'm going to hit the download button, and we're going to download basically the zip file. And I'm going to open the zip file with File Explorer, and then I'm just going to go up here to extract and extract all. It's going to default into the downloads folder, which is fine. And it's going to create a folder with the same name as the zip file, which can be a little confusing. Let me show you. Close that out. I don't want that. Okay, so if we click on the yellow folder, anything you download should go in your downloads folder. That's how you get to it. And if you're like most people, you probably have stuff in there from World War II that you downloaded. I don't know. What I'm saying is you might have a lot of stuff in there if you've never cleaned it out. You might even see the same file over and over and over and over again with a parentheses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because you kept downloading it and you didn't know where it was going. So how did I get there? I'm going to show you one more time because you should go in and clean up your downloads folder. If you haven't done that, click on the yellow folder, click on downloads. That should be your default download directory of everything you've ever downloaded if you've never cleaned it out. And you'll see it appears that we have two things that are almost identically named. But this is a .zip file, and it's got a little zipper on it. That's the box, if you want to call it the package, right? When you order something, like when I order computer parts from Amazon, quite often I get 4 or 5 parts all arriving in one box. What a zip file is it's packaged a bunch of files into one file, so I don't have to download 4 separate files. I download this one box, and then I extract it or I empty the contents of the box, which creates this folder. And inside of this folder are the individual files. Now, in this instance, I only need the BIOS file. If Gigabyte offered me the opportunity to simply download the BIOS file straight up, that's all I needed. But they don't know how we're going to apply the BIOS. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And the way that I do it, I just need the BIOS file, which ends in at least with Gigabyte, it ends with .12c. With Asus, it ends in .cap, and then the version of the BIOS is earlier in the file name. So each motherboard manufacturer has their own way, but they're all very similar. I have a blank flash drive. It says BIOS on it. It's just a little 2 gig flash drive I've had for many, many years. And a small flash drive, preferably formatted in FAT32, is ideal for BIOS flashing. Small meaning 8 gigs or smaller, 16 gigs or smaller. But we're only going to use a tiny little bit of that flash drive. You'll see it's just 16 megabytes is the size of the BIOS file. And I'm going to right click on it and choose copy. And then over to my flash drive, I'll hit paste. And that's going to copy that file onto this flash drive, which is blinking on and off as it should. And now I'm going to restart the computer. And I'm going to press the end key on the keyboard, END. I'm going to start, well, not yet. I have to wait for it to restart. Okay, now I can start pressing. On this keyboard, I have to hit function and the right arrow because it doesn't have all the keys of a full-size keyboard. And so as soon as I see the post screen, there we go, I can start hitting end. And you'll see in the bottom right, it says end is QFlash. That brings up, we can go into the BIOS manually by hitting delete, or with Gigabyte boards, I can hit the end button on the keyboard. Either way, it takes us to this place. I'm going to press enter, and it sees the BIOS file here. And the reason why I use a blank flash drive is I want to make sure I have no confusion over what other files might be on the flash drive, because this is a pretty critical process, and it's important that you use the right file. And even though modern motherboards won't allow you to flash an incorrect BIOS, it's inefficient for me to have to sift through a list of files to find the one I want. Therefore, I have flash drives are so inexpensive, I have a small flash drive that is always blank. And its sole purpose for its existence is for updating BIOSes. So that's the sole file on the flash drive. I cannot pick the wrong one, nor do I have to search the list to find it. We're going to click intact for the BIOS update, and now we just sit and wait for it to run through the update. We don't touch anything. Don't touch the keyboard. Don't touch the mouse. Just leave it alone. Let it process. And as long as you follow that rule, you're probably going to be just fine. Now, you watching this at home, you're probably not updating 20 computers a month. So you don't necessarily need to have a dedicated flash drive always on hand that's empty, although couldn't hurt. But that's the reasoning behind what I do. And of course, far be it from me to tell you how to do it. But that's the logic I use and why I have the processes that I have created to meet my needs, to have less opportunity to screw up and to work as efficiently as possible. Again, if that flash drive was filled with files and folders within folders and I had to dig around and find it, I could still be looking for it. Instead, I'm 90% done with my BIOS flash. And when we're done with this, we're going to erase that file, making that flash drive empty again. So it'll be ready for me the next time I use it. I don't have to wonder, why is there a file on here? Was there a reason I left it? All that stuff is very inefficient. It slows me down. So I need to, once I know I've got the BIOS applied correctly, I need to erase it, unless I'm building multiple systems that all have the same motherboard ordered at the same time. Otherwise, I'm just, again, being inefficient if I have to keep downloading, going to the manufacturer's site, and extracting it for each one when they're all going to be the same. However, if you just look at the history of my channel and my builds, you very rarely see the same build twice in a row. So. Now, the first reboot after the BIOS update, you'll see it's taking quite a while. Again, I have to encourage you to remain calm, be patient. The system is doing everything it should be doing. It would be nice if there was some way the manufacturers of motherboards could reassure you that things were working as they should, but that would require a BIOS, which it's applying right now. So kind of in a catch-22. So you just have to be told, relax, take it easy. Give it 90 seconds. And if after 90 seconds it doesn't work, then you can freak out. Just because the screen did something and then went back to the no signal, again, that's all normal. It's basically resetting itself as the BIOS is updating. And your system may do that 4 or 5 times. Just continue to be patient. Here, we've done it a 3rd time just now. Relax. It's doing what it needs to do. And when it's done, it will start Windows. And then we can erase the file off the flash drive and put the flash drive away. Here we go. And we'll run CPU-Z and make sure that the BIOS version now represents 12C instead of F10. We want F12C. So let's run through the order. We'll go to CPU-Z, execute the portable file, and verify that F12C on the main board is the BIOS. There it is, F12C. Congratulations, you've done it correctly. We can close this and make sure that there's no confusion by deleting that file from the flash drive, leaving the flash drive completely blank. So when I have to grab it next time, it doesn't slow me down trying to figure out, why is the file here? If I leave the file on there and I add another one, then I have to remember which one is the right one for that board that I'm flashing, which again reduces my efficiency, slows me down. So there is a method to my madness. So we're going to put that flash drive away. We're done with it. Till next time, we can go to NVIDIA.com and download the NVIDIA driver now, even though we've got one from Windows 10's auto update process has given us an NVIDIA driver. It has probably not given us the latest one. So I'm just going to go to NVIDIA.com, click on drivers, click on GeForce drivers, and then on the next page, I'm just going to manually select, it's a GeForce 10 series. No, it's a 16 series. It's a 16 series, right? It's a 1650. So, yeah, we'll choose 1650. I don't know, is it a super? It's just a regular. Just a regular. It's all the same driver. I don't even know why. They don't really need to ask you this. You could pretty much answer any of these, and it's all going to point you to the same driver, just so you know. But anyway, 1650. Windows 10, 64-bit, yeah. English, yeah. Download type all. Click Start Search. And the latest driver as of today, June 23rd, is driver version 446.14, which was released, wow, almost a month ago. That's pretty unusual. The higher end cards get more frequent driver updates apparently, because NVIDIA, geez, there's times where they will release a driver update within 2 weeks of each other. I'll hit download now, and it's going to grab a 535 meg file. My first hard drive was 40 megs, so we've come a ways since then, haven't we? And then I'll click on that file now that it's downloaded, and I'm going to close the browser. And in just a moment, as it's extracting the contents of that, even though it's not a zip file, it effectively, it's an automatic zip file, and it's going to extract itself to the hard drive. because it extracts hundreds of files within that one file that you've just downloaded. And what's it doing? Seems like it's taken too long. So remember, it's in the downloads folder. I don't need the BIOS folder anymore. We're done with that. I'm going to delete it, keep everything nice and tidy. I'm going to double click that one more time. Either I'm running it twice. That's what I was waiting for. Now it's extracting that. The 535 megs is all made up of hundreds of little files. And it's extracting those files right now from that master file I just downloaded. It's opening up the box and removing the contents. Now that the contents have been removed, it starts the setup.exe portion of the file, which now starts to access all the hundreds of other files that are required for this process to work. And it makes sure that that we have the right driver for the right graphics card before it installs blindly. Back in the day, drivers used to install blindly. So this is an important step. I don't think Mike needs the GeForce experience, so we'll just put the graphics driver on there, and we'll hit next using the Express install, and I'm going to close this window behind us because we don't need that open. It just adds more confusion and noise on the screen. I can empty the recycle bin just because, and then we just wait a moment for this to finish installing. It won't take very long. And then we can start our benchmarking, or we can run some testing on this and see how well it performs. I still have the DVD drive to install. I still have the second drive, the second solid state drive to partition and format. And I'm going to hook that front case fan up. Remember, I don't normally hook up the front case fan unless a graphics card is installed. And even though this is not a hot graphics card, again, it's going to Mike. So I want to make sure that he's got everything working, because if he sees the fans not running, he'll probably be upset about it. Now, for this driver to apply, we have to restart now. We'll go ahead and restart the computer. Now, this restart may take a little bit longer than a normal restart, but it should still be impressively fast. Let's find out. You got pay attention to the time on this video and watch, because you'll see there's a minutes and seconds. Here it goes right now. We can determine how long this takes to boot in seconds by just watching the timer there below the video. And we're up to desktop. It's not bad. It's not bad. To format and to partition and format that second solid state drive, I'm going to right mouse click on the Windows Start button, and then I'm going to go to Disk Management and left click on that. And it's automatically, it doesn't. It says there's just unallocated space on disk 0. So if I right click on this and say New Simple Volume, click Next, it's going to assign drive letter D, that's fine, hit Next. Make sure Perform a Quick Format is selected. I don't like the volume name of new volume. I'd rather just keep that blank. And then I'll hit Next one more time and Finish, and it's going to format that, and it's already done. And now when I click on the yellow folder, I'll have a C drive and a D drive right there. There's our Samsung SSD, and there's our D drive. I can check the Samsung drive with the Samsung Magician software I installed just a few moments before going live here. And if there's any updates, down here at the bottom, there'll be a big capital N, like new. We can click on it just to confirm that the Samsung Magician software is the latest version, and that the firmware on the Evo Plus 2 terabyte drive is also the latest version. With regards to performance benchmarks, you can certainly run the Samsung software if you want to. I prefer to be more unbiased by using a third-party utility. So for this, I use Crystal Disk Mark Portable. And just for fun, let's benchmark the Samsung drive versus the ADATA drive and see the performance difference. Let's start with the Samsung drive, which is drive C, and hit all. And right now, this will take a couple minutes, but we're going to run through the sequential reads and writes, as well as the 4K transfers and other file size transfers. And we'll get a series of numbers here. Now with PCIe Gen 3, about 3,600 megabytes a second is about the most you're going to see. Anything larger than that is either PCIe Gen 4, or you've got a RAID set up somehow with like an X299, X399, or you've got rapid mode or some other form of caching turned on. But the actual transfer rate through the bus, the most you're going to see is right around 3,600. So at 3,466 on that number there, we're pretty darn close to, if not already saturating the amount of data that can flow freely through the bus. Now with Generation 4 PCI Express NVMe drive, we're seeing around 5,000, but the bus isn't saturated until around 7,000. So the drive manufacturers, it's on them now to make the drives faster. The lanes have been widened, and they're a little bit faster with Gen 4, with the Gen 4 drive. And whereas before, the drives were kind of being held back based on the Generation 3 specification, they weren't held back by much. So now with Gen 4, now it's back to the drive manufacturers to start boosting performance, figuring out ways to make the data flow faster, since they're no longer being restricted by the bandwidth that's available through the design of the motherboard of the chip. With that said, the only way you can get Gen 4 right now is with an AMD X570 board, and I think is it their new 550 boards? Not sure. On the Intel side, you have to wait for the next generation, like the 11th generation of Intel chips. The 10th generation just came out. So there won't be any PCIe Gen 4 support on the Intel side for probably, I'm going to guess throughout the end of the year anyway. I don't think we're going to see it until 2021. I could be wrong, but that's my prediction. So there's all the final read numbers on the left side. So those are all read speeds. The write speeds on some of these solid state drives can be significantly smaller numbers, but it depends how much money you're spending on your drive. This drive, currently on Amazon, is 2 terabytes. Samsung Evo Plus sells for about $430. The suggested retail price is $399.99. So $400 is the suggested retail price. It's selling for between $20 to $100 over suggested retail because demand is outweighing the supply right now. Now, I wouldn't want to pay $420 for $400. Like if you said to me, I'll sell you $400 for $420, I would say no thank you. But that's what people are doing. People are paying more just to have it. Like it's worth it to them. But that's a $400 drive. Anyway, we've got 2 more tests here to complete, and then we'll run the same test on the A data drive. And we'll compare the numbers. You'll see up here at the top of the screen, it's telling you what's happening. So now it's preparing to do the last test. And it's going to do 5 of them and give us the best results of 5. There's 2 of 5. And you'll see that number changes, right? And it's going to do 3 of 5. If the number gets bigger, well, the biggest number should be it's not an average of the numbers, it's just the biggest number out of the 5. And there it's done. So this, just for my own sanity, I will label this as Samsung 970 Evo Plus 2 terabyte. Enter. And then what I'm going to do is I will hit Alt print screen, and it should capture just that open window. And we'll go to Microsoft Paint, and we'll make this really tiny. We'll grab the corner and just bring it right down there like so. Then I'll press Control V. That's going to paste that window, and I'm going to save this image as a JPEG photo. We'll put it into our pictures. Where's pictures at? Pictures. We'll call it exactly what it is. Samsung 970 Evo Plus 2 terabyte. And I should be able to then pull that up. Again, go back to pictures, double click this, and we will put it, oops, oopsie. I just need to grab a corner. There it is. And we'll put it right there. Looks good. All right. Put it right, come on down. So right now they're both exactly the same. It's just a picture of this window. But this window is about to change because I'm going over to the D drive. And I'll hit all, and it's going to do the exact same test on the A data drive. The A data drive is also 2 terabytes. It doesn't have an NVMe driver like Samsung. It doesn't have the advanced, very friendly user interface, useful Magician software that is unique to Samsung. AData does have a utility for their SSD, but I don't find any use in it. It's just providing like serial number and model number. It doesn't really seem to do much. So I don't see any point in installing it. So you do get a little bit less, but look at the performance numbers. On the read speed, it's actually a little bit faster on the AData drive. And this AData drive is nearly half the price. So if the Samsung drive is selling for between $420 and $450 for 2 terabytes, this AData drive of the same capacity is selling for $250. So not quite half the price for the same capacity. And in these first 2 tests, it's faster. I know it's not going to be faster on all 8 of the tests. The warranty is the same. All the NVMe drives I see on the market, whether it's Western Digital or AData or Silicon Power or Team or Sabrent or Intel, they all seem to be 5 years on the NVMe M.2 drives. Across the board, I've not seen any exceptions to that yet. So the number on the 3rd test is a little slower than the Samsung, and that's often where the differences start to appear, is on the smaller file transfers, where you're transferring, instead of one file that's 100 megabytes, you're transferring 100 files that are 1 megabyte. That affects the performance difference. For me personally, I don't really care about small file transfer. I care about best case scenario. What's the best it can do? And I realize I didn't change the wording down below. It still says Samsung 970 Evo Plus because I didn't close the software out and restart it again. So I don't want to change that right now while the test is running, because I don't want anything to interfere with the test results. So once the test results are done, I will correct the text to AData, whatever this is, 8100 XP. I can't remember the model number. Let me grab the box real quick, since I'm waiting for the test to complete anyway. But you know, there's a significant price difference there, and you should know the difference so that you're not going to be disappointed. If you like the peace of mind that comes with Samsung, you're going to pay extra for it. And if you like that Magician software, AData, obviously quite a bit slower on the writes. Remember, I said that's more common on lesser expensive solid state drives, is where you'll start to see the performance gap is in the writing speeds. But for most ordinary everyday folks, they're never going to notice a difference. In fact, copying a large file at nearly 2,600 megabytes a second on the right versus 3,300 megabytes per second on the left, I'm rounding, right? 3298 about 3300, and on the right side 2582 is about 2600. It's milliseconds in reality. The amount of time it takes to move data between those two numbers is milliseconds. Milliseconds do add up to full seconds, and those seconds add up to minutes, and those minutes add up to hours. If you're constantly copying huge files or large numbers of files all the time. But that would make you a pretty unusual user. Your usage would be quite unique. The average computer owner copies large files from time to time, copies small files from time to time, and isn't going to notice any difference whatsoever. If you said to the average consumer, which one of these two drives seems faster to you without running any tests, just sit at it and use the computer for a couple of months, and now use it after I make this change, they'll say you didn't change anything. So it's mostly people looking at benchmarking software than it is any reality. Though there are some people out there that do need I don't want to say they need it, but they see a benefit to the higher speed that may result in more productivity, but they don't represent the majority of people who buy the drives. And it's those technical people that are often the ones giving the advice on YouTube. And the problem is, the people they're giving it to are often not technical people. So they're telling you about things that are important to them that does no implication to the viewer. So I'm trying to keep everything realistic here and practical. The people who are at that level, generally speaking, don't need to be told what to buy. They already know what they need. And when those people who are the tech nerds then want to make a video, they start getting into all of the technical detail of the drive that honestly most of the other technical people already know. And the vast majority of viewers who are not technical people are going to go, wow, I feel really stupid. I don't know what any of this means. I guess I want the better one, right? Well, it's only better to the person who's technical. If you're an average computer user, between these two drives, as I mentioned, you will not see any difference between them, or you'd be very unlikely to. So it would make sense not to spend $420 when you can spend $250 and not have any noticeable difference between the two. And for the technical people, I don't need to say a word to them because they already know. You understand the difference? So technical people making videos for other technical people, I think, is weird because other technical people already know what they know. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sort of bridge the gap between the vast majority of computer owners, and the vast majority of computer owners are not technical people. They just need to know the gist of it, right? I'm not trying to turn you into a tech, but I want you to have realistic expectations. And spending the extra money because Joe, whoever, on his YouTube channel said it's totally worth it to spend the $200 extra because it's so much more in performance, it's so much more in these critical file transfers that you will never do, that it's bad advice to you, in my opinion, because they're telling you about their needs, not about yours. And that's all I got to say about that. There's our final numbers. This is the XPG. Okay, let me change the text here. Let's see, this is A data. A data XPG SX 8100, also 2 terabytes. And then we'll grab a screenshot of this and we'll keep it for posterity. Same thing, make sure the window is selected. I'm going to hit Alt Print Screen on my keyboard and then open up Microsoft Paint. And then paste that one. And then we'll save it as a JPEG picture. Again, it's going to go back to the pictures folder. And A data XPG SX 8100 2 terabyte. And it will add the .jpg. If you'll notice on the first one I added .jpg. It's just, you don't have to do that. And if I go now to the file location, pictures, A data, now I can grab this window, right? Where is it? There it is. We can close this out, and we can see these side by side anytime we want to now. Knowing that it's a fair test, it's all on the same motherboard with the same windows, the same configuration. Anything that would interfere with the test would be the same on both drives. It would interfere equally on both, so that's a fair comparison. If you're testing one drive in one computer and another drive in another computer, not a fair comparison. All right. So yeah, that's the XPG drive from AData. Some people talk about reliability. Some people talk about archival storage. Again, I find this to be a very strange thing for people to come out onto the internet and act as though they're an authority on the subject matter. They don't often use a real name. They're quick to correct people, and they lack any explanation or understanding of practicality in their criticism. So somebody who says, for example, if you want to archive data, you should not use a solid state drive or flash drive, to me is somebody who's never archived data on a solid state drive or flash drive. There are people who have read things online. I've never met a person in my life who's ever had files just magically vanish off of any storage drive ever. This is all theory and discussion with no evidence or proof. So if somebody out there has a flash drive with data on it that they put on there 10 years ago, and that data is no longer there, I'd like you to send me that flash drive. Because I suspect somebody deleted that data. Somebody else in your household or your company did something to it. Well, it is technically possible for the data to just evaporate over time. I have never in my life seen it. But there's a lot of stories about it on the internet as though it's commonplace and you should be concerned and have anxiety about it. You should always have backups of any important data. So regardless if the AData drive or the Samsung drive were to fail, you've got your warranty and you're going to recover from your backup. Not every single Samsung drive is impervious to failure. And whether or not AData drives fail more than Samsung drives, I don't know, because I have never seen a solid state drive fail. Whether it was SATA or NVMe, there's plenty of people on the internet that will tell me their story. Well, I had one fail. Well, I didn't say you didn't, did I? I said, I've never seen one fail. I've never had a customer bring me a system with a failed solid state drive. And no solid state drive I have ever installed has ever failed. So that's all I'm telling you. I'm not telling you that they don't fail, and I'm not telling you you haven't experienced a failure. I'm telling you I've never seen one, and I see hundreds of computers a year. How many do you see? Now, obviously, if you work in data recovery, you're going to see a lot of failed drives. That's your job. But they're going to ship in from all over the world. They're not going to just be, one guy down the street who's just sending you drives every day. And you will probably see a propensity of more drives from a certain manufacturer than another, but that doesn't mean that that drive manufacturer is less reliable. It may be that the drive sells for less money and there were more of them in the marketplace, and that percentage-wise, they may in fact have the same failure rate as the bigger, more expensive brand. It's just not that easy, right? So regardless of whatever the statistics say with regards to reliability, your data is your responsibility. And whether the statistics are in your favor or not in your favor is irrelevant, because reality is what it is. You could say the Samsung drive is more reliable. I don't know that that's true, but let's just pretend that you believe that to be true. And for that reason, you spend the extra money to pay for the added reliability, only to have the drive fail on you 2 months later. It's absolutely possible. It's also possible you could have spent the $250, concerned that the cheaper drive was not as reliable, and never have a failure with it. Or it could fail in 2 months. Things fail. There's no manufacturer you can go to that guarantees a product will never ever fail for any reason. There's also a lot of other ways you can lose your data, from ransomware to a stolen computer to a loss in a natural disaster, a fire, a flood. There's so many different ways people lose just accidentally deleting files. Power spike could corrupt the data. Nothing you can do about it. That's why you make copies of your data, and why all this nonsense about reliability or archival storage is nothing but conjecture based on theory, not from people with any experience. Nobody is experiencing, or not experiencing, nobody is communicating practicality. So I hope that's what you take from what I'm trying to explain to you. There are no absolutes in this world. There's no guarantees. That's why we make backups. And regardless if you're buying a cheap thing or an expensive thing, you'd hope that your customer service would be better. If you buy a Mercedes, you think when you take it to the dealer, you get a better service than the Hyundai dealership. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'd like to think if I bought a really expensive car that the dealer would take extra good care of me than if I bought the cheapest car. That doesn't mean the cheapest car is going to be more or less reliable. Simply the expectation that I have as a customer and how I'm treated, I expect to be directly related to how much I spend. But I will tell you, I've been to some Hyundai dealerships where they've treated me very well. So again, there's no absolutes here. And all the dealerships are not the same from any manufacturer. So anyway, something to consider when you're selecting parts for yourself. It's something to consider when you're watching or reading other content on the internet about technical details. Do they apply to you? And I think for most of you, they really don't. But it's your money. And, far be it for me to tell you how to spend it. I just want you to have the right expectations so that you make the decision that's best for you. It's not my job to make your decision for you. And when you watch a video or you read an article where they're dictating to you one is superior to the other, that is assuming that their measure of what is more beneficial is also your measure of what is more beneficial. But if you don't use the drive in that way, if you don't use your computer in that way, then that doesn't apply to you. Okay. So we've got our benchmarks up for that. Let's torture this thing with Prime 95. I think that's what I'd like to do, see how our cooling is going to go. So this is an i9 9900K, the Mugen 5 cooler. We've certainly run this numerous times before in past builds, and I'm expecting it to run perfectly fine. There was some question as to whether or not the support bracket on the cooler was straight or not. If the cooler's not making flush contact with the CPU below it, we're going to see some pretty high temps. I don't want to see this thing break 85 degrees centigrade with 15 minutes on Prime 95. So let's start that now. Let me go back to my full screen setting so I can see again. There it is. And we're going to close out these pictures. Get rid of those. And I bring up this free program called HW Monitor. We'll double click on that. Let that run. Again, these are all portable programs. I'm not installing anything. I don't want to leave anything behind on the system. And here we've got the different core temperatures. There's 8 cores on the processor with 8 additional threads for a total of 16. This value right here is its current temperature. The one in the middle is the minimum temperature since I started the software. And then this is the maximum temperature since I've started the software. So the maximum temp we've seen is 42 degrees centigrade. We want to keep this below 85. We can hit 100, but you don't want to. We can, but we don't want to. That's when things start to throttle and it affects PC performance. So what I do is I bring up Prime 95 and I'm going to click OK to start running it just with all the default settings, and then we'll close this and we'll bring this window up to the front. And we're gonna watch these temperatures. You can see they're already starting to climb. We're into the 52 degrees centigrade. And I'm going to grab my timer. I've got a digital timer and I'm going to start it and we're going to let it run 15 minutes from now, which will clearly be a longer than 15-minute test. This is my timer. You guys can see it right there. And we'll just kind of put that right over there. And we're going to wait and watch the results. In the meantime, if you have any questions for me in the chat room, we'll bide our time for the next 15 minutes, kind of glancing back at these temps from time to time to see how it's performing. And it looks like I've missed a couple of contributions. So a thank you to Kevin Arsenault with a $20 Canadian contribution. He says, keep up the good work that you do. We thank you for what you do. Thank you, Kevin. Gil Garcia with a $25 contribution says, happy birthday, Carrie. Hey, thanks, Gil. Dave Ruger's contributed $5. Thanks, Dave. I'll make sure Dave's a moderator in here. Frankie B continues his amazing generosity with a $50 contribution. It says, hello all, hope you are having fun. Hey, Frankie, thank you so much. Glenn's Music with a $5 Australian contribution says, happy birthday to the king of Coke, the boss of BIOSes, and the OCD of CPUs. May all of your installations be successful, and remember all I taught you. I'm not worthy. Thank you. George Z just contributed $5 and says, here's something for you. Right on. Bordura Catalan has contributed $10. He says, happy birthday, Uncle Kerry. I will see you at Buddy's Pizza. I will be there late September, early October. It'll be good to see you again. Robert Dumont with a $5 contribution. Thank you, Robert. Make sure Robert's a moderator here. Solo with a $20 contribution. Oh, that one I read out loud already. So thank you all for your kindness and your support. If you have any questions for me in the chat room, I'd be happy to answer it. Does this 10700K do hyper-threading? Well, let me ask you, what would you be using the hyper-threading for? How many cores? What software are you using that requires more than 4 cores? Let's answer that question first. You see, I see a lot of this on the internet. I see people prioritizing a need because of information that's poisoned their brain to prioritize things that have no impact on them. So when you break down the question, because the question is, does the 10700K have hyperthreading? Instead of answering your question, I first want to ask you a question. What do you use your computer for that you require that, and exactly how many do you require? Because I think 8 out of 10 people who ask that question cannot answer me. They'll say, well, I don't know. Aren't I using the cores automatically? No, you're not. Well, doesn't Windows use them? No, it doesn't. So then what's the point of it? There isn't. Unless you have a specific application that benefits from multiple cores, whether or not there's hyperthreading will likely make no difference whatsoever in the performance of your computer. You'll spend more money, that's for sure, but you may not see any benefit from it unless you have a very specific application that utilizes additional cores beyond, a standard 2 to 4 cores that some software takes advantage of. Windows certainly will handle it. And to some extent, Windows will use other cores, but it's not like you might think it is. I'm afraid you guys think that that's something that just automatically takes place. And it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. And I encourage you, if you get the opportunity, in practicality, to run a computer the way you run it, with and without hyperthreading, and then you can see for yourself what I'm telling you is true. Unfortunately, what I see a lot of are people that just get information online, and it's all theory-based. Well, the guy on the YouTube channel said, more threads is better. Well, for the way that person uses their computer, that may be a true statement. But for the way the average person uses their computer, it's a very false statement. Or it's a statement that doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. If you never use more than 400 horsepower in your car, and you're never going to, me telling you the 800 horsepower car is better isn't necessarily true. Because if you're never going to utilize more than 400 horsepower, why did you spend the extra money for the 800 horsepower? Plus, you've got the added maintenance and insurance costs and everything else that comes along with more power. On the other hand, if you have a legitimate purpose for needing that, then by all means, it's a reasonable question to ask. But I think a lot of the questions that are asked are based on the information that's being fed to people, and that information is not being disclaimered or qualified that the information is specifically a measure from somebody who utilizes that aspect of the processor or the storage, that it's being utilized in a specific way in order to acknowledge the gain or to feel the gain, to feel a difference. You have to use it a special way, not a normal way, a special way. And if you're not using your computer in a special way, then there's no benefit to you to spend the extra money. But don't let me stop you. I mean, if you want to spend it, it's yours to spend how you want. But I think you should have realistic expectations. I see people prioritizing things like cooling. There's no reason you need to think about your cooling. There's no reason you need to run temperature checks on your system. You don't need to look at your frames per second. It's all completely unnecessary. It's practically a disease. It's sort of a hypochondria. I'll find the word. Techno-hypochondria, where you are looking for something to be sick about. I need to check my frames per second. I need to check my temps. I need to compare it against somebody else. All unhappiness, every bit of unhappiness that you will experience in your life is caused by comparison. If you would stop comparing things, you'd probably be a lot happier. I don't go looking for problems. I'm busy with real problems that people have. So people running temperature stuff and they want to know, how do I get my CPU cooler? You don't have a problem. I need to know what the problem is. What is the higher temperature doing that's causing you some concern to have to address it? Then I'll help you if you actually are experiencing something. But if you're just like, well, the number's too big, I want it smaller, you're wasting my time. As a hobbyist with nothing else better to do, far be it from me to tell you how to spend your time, but don't drag me down into that sad little world. Tell us how you really feel about that. All right, let's see what we're doing on the temps. Ooh, still nice and chilly. 68 looks like the max we've seen. We're about halfway through the test. We've got nearly 8 minutes on the test there. Oh, I guess I can feed you guys, huh? So while we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and feed the boys. You hungry? Are you hungry? Past your dinner time? Here you go, boy. There you go. That's for you. What do you think, Jimmy? What do you think? You ready? You ready? Okay, here we go. Michael Danes contributed 20 bucks. He says, I just bought one of your mouse pads. Here's an extra 20 bucks for your furry kids' cookies. Well, thanks again, Michael. That's very kind. My sister just got 100 more of the mouse pads in. And already, I took 10 of them. So get them where they're available. I don't think they're going to sell out. But, that's how marketing works, right? Well, they're available. Otto wants to know, is it a good idea to use solid heat sinks for chipsets on motherboards? In other words, upgrade a cooler on the motherboard, would it last longer? So again, we run into the practicality of technology. Let's just say, I have a Z87 motherboard that I have upgraded the heat sinks on. And I have a Z87 that I did not upgrade the heat sinks on. I don't want either of those motherboards, regardless. And I'm sure they both still work fine. They're not that old. But the technology has improved many times over since, like, for example, a Z87 or an 87 series chipset is not going to have NVMe at all. It's going to be limited with how much RAM you can put in it. It's so many limits. Why would I want to hold on to old obsolete technology and make it last longer when It's not as though people are replacing equipment because of failure. People are replacing equipment because it's no longer meeting their needs. It just starts to, software becomes larger and more resource intense. So does your antivirus program, your security software. As the attacks and security issues become more complex, the software to defend becomes more complex. Now they require more RAM. Oh, I think the system went to sleep on me. Let me move the mouse around. Sorry about that. I was talking and not paying attention. There we go. So anyway, here's the bottom line. If you want a system to last a really long time, leave it the way the educated engineers designed it. If you think you can outsmart the engineers, chances are you have an inflated sense of self-importance. And I just think you should be more realistic, because if you're that intelligent, why are you not working at those companies and improving those products? Why is it that you know something far superior than the rest of us? And how is it that the rest of us aren't having these problems that you're trying to avoid by outsmarting something that isn't broken? So I'm just trying to keep it straight with you. Leave it alone. Don't go modifying your registry. Don't go deleting random files out of your System32 folder. Don't open up your computer and delid your processor and put on your liquid cooling. And please, if you want to do that, then you're welcome to do it. But don't for one instant think that you're any way superior. You just have more time and money on your hands than the rest of us to mess around with it. When I build a system for a client, my clients generally don't open those systems up and modify them. They will call me if they need anything. And those systems run an average of 8 years. 8 years. And the only reason they're replaced is they're just no longer meeting the needs. The systems are still running exactly as fast as the day I sold them, but the software is now grown and evolved to a point where they require more resources. It's like you buy a little car and you buy a little boat. And then the boat starts, your needs for the boat get bigger. I need a bigger boat, but you don't replace the car. So the car is towing the boat. And the bigger the boat gets, the fast car that was towing the boat with no problem, now it's feeling a little sluggish. You might have some trouble getting up hills. The bigger that boat gets, at some point, it's going to be so sluggish, you're like, I got to replace the car. Nothing changed with the car. It's the same car. There's nothing wrong with it. But it doesn't have the resources and the power to pull your current boat. So the software is the boat and the car is the computer in this example. Anything to make that car last longer is pointless, because it doesn't, regardless of how long it lasts, the reason you're replacing it is because it's no longer meeting your need, not because it failed. So I don't think you're outsmarting anything here with this idea that you should somehow improve the engineering design of the chipset, which is under extremely stringent requirements. I'm not fully sure you understand what these engineers have to do in order to get a board approved for manufacture, but it's got to go through AMD's or Intel's approval, and there are requirements and the specifications that have to be met. Even these coolers, you can't just make a cooler and sell it and think you're going to be okay. The cooler has to have a certain amount of pressure applied to the top of the CPU. And that's why these tests that demonstrate the spreading of thermal compound when they're taking a piece of glass and they push it down with their hands, that's not how it works. You'd have to be profoundly ignorant of how cooling is applied to think that you can emulate it with your finger. You cannot do that. You can't emulate how the thermal compound expands. You cannot emulate the bubbles and the viscosity that takes place as the CPU gets hotter, unless you do it with all of the stringent engineering requirements in place that manufacturers are required to meet before offering the product with the seal of approval that says, hey, we are compatible with Intel or we're compatible with AMD. They just say that. They have to be approved. And the only way they get approved is if they meet those engineering requirements. It's not somebody in their bedroom going, well, maybe if I use a coat hanger and do that. And no, it doesn't work like that. All right, we're just crossing 15 minutes right now. And my maximum temp is, kind of have it covered up, don't I? Maximum temp is at 73. I'm going to let it run another 5 minutes here, and we'll just keep an eye on it. The dogs are looking at me. They want a cookie. You want a cookie? Is it cookie time? Is it cookie time? All right, we'll get you a cookie. Chomp, chomp. Good boys. All right, so the big thing to take from me, from other YouTube channels, is I'm all about practicality. I don't care about hubcaps on your lawnmower. Your lawn isn't going to get mowed any faster. Your lawnmower isn't going to be more reliable. And the money you spent on those hubcaps is, in my opinion, a complete waste of money from somebody with way too much time on their hands who cares about things that don't have anything to do with the lawnmower or the purpose of the lawnmower. It's not a lawnmower parade that you're entering. It is not a showcase where you're going to the lawnmower show and it's going to be on a plinth on a display where it rotates around and people can go, ooh, look at the hubcaps on the lawnmower. It's just a complete waste of time from somebody who's bored and has money. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have time for that. I'm trying to help people with the practical nature of computers, which is, how about a computer that doesn't make me broke, that doesn't frustrate me and make me want to throw it out the window, something I can rely on, that I can turn on, it's not really, really loud, and it doesn't have to have constant maintenance all the time. I just want to turn it on and use it. Where are those videos? Well, that's what I'm trying to do here. But I do on occasion do silly things, like I've got a birthday build coming up that's absolutely impractical. And the reason I do it is it's because the impractical videos get the most amount of views. The more ridiculous and over the top and unnecessary and redundant and irrelevant it is, the more views it gets. Look at all the RGB colors. So that video, which contains very little practical information, will probably do 100 times more views, have a higher expense to make, with a system that's nowhere near as reliable and nowhere near as practical in how heavy it is, the cable management it requires. But, you know, that's the world we live in. People are like, I don't know, ooh, shiny. Not everybody, but the vast majority, it's clear. It's very obvious. Making videos that are practical just don't really do well. With few exceptions, they just don't. You don't get the kind of numbers people want to see something impractical. But seeing something impractical might be fun. Having something impractical, that's a job. It's not a job I want. So I can appreciate, you know, watching a video review of a Ferrari, but I don't want to own one. What a nightmare that sounds like. I mean, unless I was sticking it in a garage as an investment piece to resell, it's nothing I want to continually maintain and, you know, have anxiety over, you know, every little scratch or road chip that might appear in the paint because I drove it. So I'm not going to drive it. I'll just keep it in the garage. But if I'm going to keep it in the garage and not drive it, why do I have it? It's a car. It's meant to be driven. But if it requires constant maintenance and expensive maintenance, and it's spending as much time in maintenance as I am driving it, I think a Honda Accord would be preferred for practicality reasons. Sharon Idle says, bought another mouse mat. They're going. Get yours while stocks last. Thanks, Sharon. Giving the hard sales pitch there. How are we doing? We're at 19 minutes and 17 seconds. Let me make the screen big again. I know that sometimes Prime 95 can get a bit, really push on the processor right up into that 20-minute mark. So when time permits, I like to let it run a little longer than 15 minutes. But I really want to emphasize that Mike will not be pushing the system this hard ever. Never, ever. This is like testing a car by putting your foot on the gas pedal and pushing the gas pedal to the floor for a full 20 minutes. Do you know any roads that have no turns and no requirements to stop where you can drive pedal to the metal for a full 20 minutes? Of course not. No such road exists. I think that there's like a curved oval lap that you can get on and go around in circles, but not a regular old everyday road that somebody would actually drive to get somewhere. I don't know. People that get in their car and drive around in circles and then, okay, I'm here. It's not practical. So that's endurance testing, right? You're saying, okay, if this car can endure going around this lap, pedal to the metal for 20 minutes, then it should be able to easily endure whatever the driver, the customer, does to this car during everyday usage. And that's all I'm doing here. I'm pushing the CPU at 100% on all cores for a full 20 minutes, knowing that if it doesn't break 85 degrees Celsius, there's nothing Mike can do to it that's going to cause it to overheat. Because Mike will never push it. In fact, no customer I've ever had will ever push a CPU this hard for this long without a break. And we've crossed into 21 minutes. And remember, I started this late. So at 21 minutes, the highest temp we've seen is 81 degrees. And watch how quickly this test, once I stop the test, watch how quickly the temperatures will drop. Watch these temperatures right here on the left side. We're kind of bouncing around the upper 70s. Watch how quickly, when I say test, stop, and then confirm it, here we go. Okay, watch how rapidly, almost instantly, the temps drop in half. That is how quickly a CPU ramps up and ramps down in temp. And in many cases, a liquid cooler will keep your CPU hotter after the CPU is cooled down, because liquid takes longer to cool than air does. So it's not always a positive thing with the liquid coolers. Liquid coolers will generally need to be replaced every 4 years, with few exceptions. It's about the average that I've seen here in the shop. An air cooler like the Mugen 5 or whatever, you put that on, you're done for life. It's done, unless you're overclocking. But if you're overclocking, you're just looking for something to do. I mean, you're obviously somebody who's got time on your hands, or you have an interest in the extreme, but it doesn't represent the average computer owner. And there are plenty of websites and YouTube channels that cater to you. This isn't one of them. I want to cater it to the majority. All right, let me close this out and close this out. Now, TimeSpy is a pretty intense benchmark, and I don't know that the 1650 can even run it. But let's give it a shot. Do I have it in here? Oh, I didn't copy it. All right, where's my flash drive? Flash drive. There we go. You get that toy, Jimmy? Well, don't let me stop you. Go get it. Go get it. Go get it. He's murdering that thing. There, that's what I want here. See, they eat and then they get all happy. It's time to play now. I eat, I want to go to bed. All right, so this is a large file, about 6 gigs for the installation files for this TimeSpy benchmark, which you can download for free from Steam. And we'll run the setup file here. Hit next. Accept the license agreement and hit next. Next. Yes. We'll let that install. And then once it runs the first time, it's going to have a couple of updates to download, which we'll do. Winston Anglu has contributed $5 Canadian. Hey, Winston, thank you. And Mike Yazzie with a $20 contribution. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that very much. The mouse pads are available if you go to kerryholzman.com or kerryholzmanshop.com or shopkerryholzman.com. I think all 3 of those should take you to the merch page, which is different from the Amazon stuff. The Amazon stuff is the stuff I buy that you see me using on camera, like the screwdriver, the turntable, the Lazy Susan. And the merch page is stuff that we have specifically made with my logo. And if you want it, there's a limited number of items. I really don't want a gift shop. guess I've got one. Never, never really said I'm going to open up a computer repair center and then put in a gift shop. Sharon just posted a link to the site there. So thank you, Sharon. All right, now this should almost be done. I guess I don't need the flash drive installed there anymore. I can take that out. There's the update I was telling you about. We'll hit download. This will just take a moment. There's like 2 updates, or at least there. Last I did this, there were 2. When I do the testing, I like to make sure I have all the latest updates in order to make sure that the testing is as accurate as possible. I'm not so much worried about any specific frames per second or any specific score. I want to see the test complete. If the test crashes during the test, then there's something wrong that has to be fixed. Again, I find people will sit there and compare benchmark numbers to other people's systems, and there's so much information you don't have, including the authenticity of those benchmarking numbers and what somebody might have done cleverly to try to imply that they're superior to you. You might all be dealing with just an illusion, and I don't choose to play that. Let's see, update. That kind of manipulation requires your consent, and I just don't give my consent to it. It's not something that, oops, there it goes. It's not something I condone. It's my time and my value system, not yours. And I see people get pulled into stuff. It's like a trap. And it's like, don't you see what they're doing? Can't you see how they've manipulated you? I guess not. All right, let's go ahead and run. And of course, I'm referring to this, constant bickering I see. Sometimes it's in the chat room, sometimes just in forums, whatever. It's everywhere on the internet. It's just a lot of people talking and very few people listening. So right now it's going to run this TimeSpy demo. Because this is the free version of the benchmark, we can't just go right to the benchmarks. It's not a full-fledged benchmark. You have to pay for it. But this free version you can download and compare your numbers if you want to, or at least have an expectation of what range you should be in. And then also make sure that just the thing runs without crashing to give you some self-confidence if you feel like you need to test your system that it doesn't feel right to you. If the benchmark runs, regardless of the frames per second, if the benchmark runs without crashing, the system's doing what it's supposed to do, at least as far as not crashing goes. Then when you talk about improvements to performance, you worry about that after you make sure, first of all, that you're stable, that you're running, what's the word I want? Reliably. You've got to be reliable before you can improve the performance. You try and put performance above reliability, you're going to be unreliable. It's a whole thing you won't be able to rely on. It'll be unstable. So get it stable. Once you verified everything is stable and you want to start tweaking things to try and eke out a little more performance, that is the order of events. And if you leave it alone, you might find it's faster when it's slower. Because if it's faster and it starts crashing on you, the system that isn't crashing, that's slower, suddenly becomes the faster system because it's not crashing. Is my video covering up the benchmark numbers? No. Okay. Oh, because it's still in the demo mode, that's why. David says Windows 10 2004 said their indexing has been modified so it doesn't slow down Windows. Do we still need to disable the with the optimizer tool, the Uncle Carrie's Windows 10 optimizer? I don't, and I thought I made this clear before, but I guess not. Or maybe you missed that day. I don't care that the Windows indexer slows things down. I've never seen an improvement in performance turning off the indexer. What I do see is an increase in available hard drive space from all the data files the indexer creates. And on solid state drives, which are primarily all I install anymore, space is at a premium. And so the space being used, I want the customer to have the advantage of using that space as much as possible. So because I don't have any customers that actually utilize the indexer, the features of the indexer, but they do utilize the storage capacity of their drives, I want to give the end user all the storage available. And the longer the indexer runs, the bigger the index files get. If you don't believe me, go to a system that has had indexing turned on for a few months and look at your used amount of space on your C drive. Then disable the indexing, let it run through, it'll take a while, and then check your amount of free space and let me know the difference. I think you'll be surprised at exactly how much you get back. It's quite significant in most cases. So once again, people get these ideas in their head, and instead of asking questions like, is there any other benefit to enabling or disabling, they've already concluded there's only one reason without confirming it, and then asked if that reason still applies when it was never that reason to begin with. But they jumped ahead of that with their question without first confirming what they believe to be true through a misinterpretation of the information that they've read, or perhaps the information was conveyed inaccurately and they interpreted it correctly, but the person who told them didn't express it correctly. So I think there needs to be this confirmation of your understanding before it leads to the question. I don't know. It's something I see people do over and over and over again. Whether they're making accusations without all the information, they're not asking questions to confirm what they believe to know is true, and they immediately jump to the follow-up question that assumes everything that they based it on was all accurate without any confirmation. If you work in technical support, you're going to get a lot of that, a lot of it. And then people now don't know the difference quite often between technical support and tutoring. They think because they don't know how to use something that they can call technical support and get free hand-holding. That is, technical support is not tutoring. It's not teaching. Technical support is there to resolve a problem. It's not there to teach you how to use the product. And people think if I don't know how to use the product, then there's a problem with the product. No. It's a problem with you not taking the time or going through the procedures that you need to go to learn how to use the product. That is not the job of technical support. But if you ever get into technical support, you'll understand this. Here we go. Yeah. I do appreciate the questions. It gives me an opportunity to discuss some of the frustration, right? Like when the other question came in about, does it have multiple cores? Well, what do you need the multiple cores? What are you using? What software specifically, and how many cores do you need? They just assumed more cores was better. They didn't confirm that first and went right to their question when the basis or the foundation that the question is based on is perhaps completely irrelevant to them to begin with, negating the point of the question and negating any benefit to the answer. It doesn't benefit you to have that information if that information uh, affects only people who use a computer in a certain way. All right, there's our time spy final number 3801. I think on the 1660 we were in the 6,000 range. On the 2080 Ti or the 2080, I think we're in the 12,000 range. So just kind of gauge the expectation accordingly. A $160 card versus a $300 card versus a $900 card. The numbers at the end result of the test are directly related to the amount of money you spent for the card. It's not rocket science. All right. You're not going to buy a $150 card brand new in a box and expect to get $800 card performance. When did I start YouTube? I started YouTube in 2008, but I think this account is 2012. So I'll say 2012 just to be safe. But prior to this account, I had a different account, and that was pretty sure that was '08. I'm not exact. My memory is not that good, but definitely since 2012, for sure. Okay, well, I think Mike is going to be real happy with this. At this point now, we've passed the cooling tests, we've passed the graphics tests, and I think what I will do is just go ahead and shut it down. So let me do that real quick. We'll close out Time Spy. We can delete the installation files. I don't think Mike's going to want that left on his system. I will take all that off. I can take Prime 95 off and take HW Monitor off. I don't need Crystal Disk Mark anymore, and I don't need Crystal Disk Info anymore. I don't need CPU Z anymore. And then I will empty the recycle bin just to dump that junk out of there and shut this computer down. You'll see how fast it shuts down here in just a moment. It's already off. And then I will go back to full screen on camera 1. So I was trying to think what else I had to do to this system. Cable management. I'm just going to take all these cables here, and they get, each one individually gets wrapped up just more or less the way it came out of the box. Just go with the bends that already exist. There's less resistance. See how nice and neat that starts to look? One cable at a time. Sort of like that, and then I'll grab a nylon zip tie, and I'm going to go through the holes in the bottom of the case and bolt that straight down with a nylon zip tie. And that makes it nice and tidy, and also enables Mike to be able to easily utilize any additional power cables for any modifications he does in the future with the machine. I still have to hook up that front fan, but I'll do that with the optical drive because I don't really care about that stuff. It's not that important. I'm going to be sending some new RAM to my friend Ron, who's having lockup problems with that AMD system that I built. I'm fairly confident it's a RAM issue, even though it never locked up for me. Ron is very technically abled, thankfully, so I don't have to have him ship the system back. I will just order some RAM on Amazon and have it directly shipped to him, so I don't even have to go to a post office. And then I will follow up with you if that makes any difference or if the lockups continue. And we'll follow up from there and see what's going on. I know it's a problem I would not have had with an Intel system. It's kind of a consequence of AMD that it's a bit more particular with RAM. And I think a lot of people are just so in the clouds with AMD, they just refuse to acknowledge the negatives. It's as if there's no negative side with AMD. And you should be very concerned if somebody is advocating any product without full disclosure. It's just like when you see medicine on a commercial on the television here in America. It tells you how wonderful the medicine is and how it can improve your life. And then, oh, by the way, it may cause sudden death. It may cause stomach cramping and diarrhea and hair loss, whatever the, potential side effects are. Well, Intel's got their pros and cons, but don't think that AMD doesn't have any cons. There are pros and cons to both sides, and which one you value more, which one that you place more emphasis on, you say, oh, well, RAM compatibility is not a big deal to me. That's fine. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean it's not important to other people. So for full disclosure, I think when offering information about making product recommendations, someone says, well, what do you think of AMD? Oh, they're great. Well, they're great as long as X, Y, and Z are met first as prerequisites. Same is true to some extent with Intel, right? Pros and cons. Nothing is 100%. There are no absolutes. And I'm really upset because obviously what was supposed to be just be a nice sort of here, have a computer has turned into here, have another thing to diagnose and fix. But it's important. It's critical that I know what's causing the problem. Because if this was a paying customer and I delivered a computer that's locking up, that did not lock up for me, I need to understand what happened and how I can avoid that in the future. So while I'm kind of complaining about this whole thing was avoidable, there's a lesson to be learned in it. And the sooner I learn what it is, the better I become at my job, regardless of the blame, regardless of BIOS update issues or compatibility issues with certain RAM manufacturers. None of that matters. What matters is that you know it so that when you're making purchase decisions for your clients, that you're not having to lose money and perhaps damage your reputation because you didn't know that these compatibility issues existed. And then that sort of makes you look like an idiot, right? And so it should. But that's what happens when you get all your information online with no actual real life experience. So this is a real life experience. And when these things happen, they are opportunities to grow. I just had other things to do. I don't have time to grow right now. But you don't get to choose that, When it's time, it's time. You don't get to pick. I'd like to learn something today. I learned things on days I wasn't planning to learn anything on. It just happened anyway. I want to just give the dogs some water. Excuse me for a minute. I'm over here for a second. If you guys have other questions for me, I do enjoy the questions, even though I am sort of critically, minded with regards to the purpose of the question. I think it's an important thing to discuss, the purpose of the question. Because I'm finding a lot of people online in the technical community seem to suffer from a lot of anxiety and concern over things that don't matter to them and how they use their computer. I can't emphasize that enough. So I think the way to correct this is to make people aware of what they're doing. And if they realize what they're doing doesn't make any sense, maybe they can have a better quality of life and focus their energies on things that really do matter to them and how they use their computer, and not worry so much about what some other person online is saying or how they're measuring, right? Because how they measure may not be, it may not have any impact on you. All right, sorry. Let me look through the chat, see if we've got any other questions in here. Got about 685 people watching. We're just about 2 hours into the broadcast. I'm going to wrap up here real soon. So if you guys have questions for me, this will be the time to ask. Lots of happy birthdays coming in. Hey, thanks you guys for the birthday wishes. I appreciate that. Do I have any recommended SSDs? I use Samsung, Intel, AData, Sabrent. I've got some made by Team and Silicon Power. My preference, I really like that AData drive for the price, that SX8100 we just tested. That's in the machine behind me. I think that's a hell of a deal, 250 bucks. The Intel drive, the 660p, is no longer $200 for 2 terabytes. It's now like around 240, 225, 240. So the price gap between the far slower Intel drive at 2 terabytes and the AData drive at 2 terabytes is now closer together. So for the extra 20, 25 bucks to get nearly 40% more performance, I think the AData is the better deal. So right now, today, and this is always fluctuating and changing, if I want the best drive for value, I think the AData drive. If I want the best drive for the least amount of money, I think Intel is still up there as one of the cheaper available drives that's of that caliber of reliability and support. If I want the best drive money can buy, within reason, I think the Samsung 970 Evo Plus is right there. It's kind of king of its own hill. Although Intel does make a faster drive, it's not very practical. It's far, far more money and not even worth considering, in my opinion. And then, of course, Sabrent. Now, if you want a large capacity drive, Sabrent's one of the first to release their 8 terabyte drive and the 4 terabyte. I've been using the 4 terabyte drive now, and it's the fastest QLC drive I've ever seen. I can't get over how fast it is. And I will follow up with you guys with regards to any reliability or troubles should any appear. But it is on my main machine that I use every day, and I think that's just the best way to test a product. You don't run it through a bunch of tests over 4 days and conclude whether the product is any good. I think you got to live with it and rely on it so that if something happens, you're affected emotionally. And then see how customer service treats you. Do they prioritize you? Do they make the process painless? Do they find a solution quickly? And those are very important considerations to weigh when making a purchasing decision. Ideally, if the Sabrent drive is anything like any other solid state drive I've ever used, I'll never have a problem with it. So we'll see. Winston Anglu has contributed again. He says, "Happy Canadian Vancouver birthday." All right, thanks, Winston. Samuel Ramos says, "Happy actual birthday." Thanks, Samuel. Clint's Music says, "I have a question. When flashing the BIOS on a Gigabyte board, what's the difference between fast and intact modes?" So the fast mode is just going to copy over, it's my understanding, it just copies over the minimum changes in the BIOS um, without resetting certain settings that you may have set. And intact, I think, copies the entire BIOS. You know what? I'm really, what I'm thinking and what I'm saying aren't lining up. Let me just quickly take a look on Google, because I do believe the fast mode is not preferred, that it's not as complete. And I'm trying to find the right words to detail that more, to elaborate on that. And Asus does this as well. You'll see flash versus intact. So intact, apparently, as I mentioned, it updates everything instead of the bare minimum, but I don't see it better. It's just not explained very well here. If I had to guess, fast wipes all the BIOS settings and just rewrites the BIOS, and intact migrates your current BIOS settings, which would be slower. That may be what's going on there. The default is intact. And there's a reason why Gigabyte has set that to the default mode. And I've never really questioned it. I always, when it comes to the BIOS updates, I stick with the defaults. I don't try to outsmart it. And I don't have any reason to look at what the other mode does because it's never left me wanting. Like I've never selected intact and ended up with a result that was undesirable or unexpected. Therefore, why would I go and look at what the other setting does? There's nothing to fix. But it's a valid question that I don't have an exact answer for, but I'm sure you could reach out to Gigabyte support or Gigabyte forums, and there will be people on there far more knowledgeable than I am that can explain it far better. But the default is intact, and I would leave it at the default. Are triple fans a must on an RTX 2070 Super? I don't know. I mean, do you see any RTX 2070 Supers with two fans? If not, is it just because they're sold out, or is it because it doesn't exist with two fans? And if it doesn't exist with two fans, do you think it's a conspiracy, or do you think there might be a reason? I mean, there should be enough information for you to conclude, because regardless, knowing that there is or there isn't, what does it change for you? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish? You're just wanting to know if you can buy a two. Does anybody know where a two-fan 2070 Super is available for sale? Is that what you're asking? Because that's what you want to buy? I'm sort of confused by the question. And why? Why do you? What is it about two fans that you find superior to three fans? What is the problem you're looking to solve? I see Elliot there in the chat room. Elliot says, happy birthday, Carrie. Well, hey, thank you, Elliot. Zero Core says there are a bunch of 2070 Supers that have two fans. Well, there you go. Aorus Team Jeffrey says there are two fan models, but triple fan are better on the noise. You can turn them slower. Oh, that makes sense, right? If you only have two fans, those two fans have to work harder, therefore generating more noise to move as much air as three fans, and the fans are all the same size, right? So, so in theory, three fans should be quieter. Good point. Good point. William says it's about how long the card is, the length of the card. Well, that's a fair point too. Clearly, three fans will result in a longer card. So remember, everybody's got different priorities. The priority that was assumed here was noise. It's quite possible that you could just simply change out your computer case for $50 and buy the triple fan, and not have a length issue. But you'd rather not for some reason. So you want the dual fan and have a shorter card, or require a shorter card. You don't have a choice. But nobody asked that question. They didn't ask if the card is available at a certain length. See, this is a problem with the questions I get asked. A lot of times is you're not telling me why you're asking the question, and it makes it nearly impossible to provide the answer you're looking for because I don't understand why you're asking. So we can help each other out by being a bit more precise about your question, why you're asking it. What is it? What's your goal? My goal is to buy a video card that is a 2070 that will fit within this size of a case. Does anybody know of one? By saying, are there two fan versions? It's like playing a game. Now I have to interrogate you and work my way backwards to figure out, why are you asking the question? So I do appreciate your question, but I want you to think about the question you're asking. You don't have to play games. You can get right to the point of your question. What I'm trying to do is this. I want to use a 2070 Super. Is it possible? If that's indeed what was intended by the question, which I'm still not sure. Maybe the problem was noise. Maybe the problem is they think they're going to have an additional fan failure potential because now you've got another fan that can fail. Or maybe it's a cost. Maybe they just assume all three fan models are more expensive. Or maybe it is the length. And why does it have to be a 2070 Super? Why can't it be a 2070 Ti or a 2080? Or why does it have to be that specific model? Is it a cost concern? I'm asking because the 2070 Super with two fans are cheaper than three fans. See? So the question could have been, is there a 2070 Super available for under this price? Whether or not it's got three fans or two fans, you're making an assumption that may not always hold true. I don't believe it's true. I don't believe all three fan 2070 Supers are universally more expensive than all two fan 2070 Supers. And I think you're making an incorrect assessment based on a foundation that then led to the question, which made your question, so it made the answer to your question not really adequate to what you were actually wanting to know. And well, it may be the case that currently three fan 2070 Supers are more money. I don't know that that's always the case. And right now, video cards are pretty hard to get. In general, cards are expensive right now. Solid state drives are expensive right now. And even motherboards are expensive right now. So I don't know that now is the best time to be gauging that. And furthermore, the next generation, the 3000 series of NVIDIA and the new AMD Radeon cards are right around the corner. And when they come out, the price of the current models is going to significantly drop. This is not a good time to buy graphics cards because of, one, availability with the pandemic, and two, the introduction of new cards that will render the value of the current cards significantly reduced in value in just a matter of months. I'm trying to think when that NVIDIA card is supposed to be made available, but I think it's no later than the fall, if I'm not mistaken. Parker wants to know, what case would you recommend for someone with vision loss to build in? You know, I don't think that somebody with vision loss needs anything special other than the right attitude, that you can achieve whatever you set your goals to be. I think the Corsair 200R is a very open, airy, easy to work on case. But I'm also not visually impaired, so I can't speak from that perspective. But I can tell you, if I was visually impaired and I decided I wanted to build a computer, I don't care what case I was using, because I would get it done. Which way is easier? Which way is going to be the least resistance? I don't know, because I don't know what your skills are, and I don't know what would make it easier for you visually impaired and what would make it easier for me visually impaired may be two entirely different things. I don't think the case plays a great big role if you're visually impaired, because it's the biggest part of your computer. There's nothing bigger than the case. There's no organ on your body larger than your skin. Not true in my case. Anyway, the hard part for visually impaired folks would be the cabling, getting those little pinned power switch, the front port umbilicals hooked up, maybe the power connectors, although they're pretty large. And then, of course, the screws, the little tiny screws used to secure the motherboard in place, I think are going to be your struggle. Not the biggest part. The case is always the biggest part. So anyway, that's my thought on that. I don't have an answer for you, unfortunately. Wayne Lawrence says, yeah, good luck finding a choice of power supplies right now. You're preaching to the choir on that one. Boy, do I know. Nick Poverman says, good luck getting a web camera these days. That's not true anymore, Nick. Web cameras are everywhere. That was something that hit right during those first 4 to 6 weeks of the pandemic, but all the inventories have been replenished. Webcams are widely available. That stuff is, you can easily get a webcam now. Look, you'll see. Go on Amazon, go to Newegg, they're everywhere. People who wanted them sort of bought them right at the beginning, and that rush has died down. So yeah, webcams are easy. John Williams says the 200R case is such a nice case to work in, and it's so lightweight and lots of room to build. Agreed, John. But those may not be beneficial or um, traits that are important to the person asking the question. Jean-Marc Barrera has contributed 21 Canadian dollars. Thank you, Jean-Marc. And Abdul Azim Patel has contributed $10 and says, enjoy your birthday. Thank you, Abdul and Jean-Marc, for your generosity and support. It means a lot to me. For the birthday wishes, of course. I appreciate that. Wayne D also says happy birthday. Thank you, Wayne. Ah, yes, Paul Garrett says don't forget to smash the like button. It's like every YouTube content creator since the beginning of YouTube has to tell their viewers in every single video to be sure and hit the thumbs up button if you like the content. Every single video ever made, every day, all the time, requires that the content creator remind the viewer, as though they've never been on YouTube before, to smash the thumbs up button. So there you go. If you like the content, you can let me know. And subscribe if you want to be alerted anytime new content, blah, 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 blah. Everybody says it on every single video ever made on YouTube. There, I said it. Nick says, I bet some people don't even know where the thumbs up button is. Well, that's true, because they might be watching on a big screen TV, right? And they don't think they've got a thumbs up button. They may not think they've got video notes because they've never experimented with the remote control while the video was playing. Take your TV remote and start hitting your up and down arrows where a YouTube video was playing. Start pressing some buttons on that remote and watch what they do. You'd be surprised what information is there. YouTube could do a bit more with their app, and the TV manufacturers could do a bit more to inform the end user, that there are other options available. But if you don't go pushing on those buttons, you're never going to see them, and therefore they don't exist. Just like the don't panic glasses from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Your life isn't in danger if you don't see the danger. There's nothing to panic about. Everything will be okay. So as soon as there's danger, the glasses turn black and you can't see it. You don't panic. It's the old ostrich sticking his head in the sand rule, right? Winston Anglo's contributed $2 Canadian. Thank you, Winston. The Corsair 200R new ships from the UK now at over $107. And 67 and change for the case. I don't know what that means. Ships from the UK at over $107 and 67 and change. I don't know what that means. Skinman says he's looking for the blah 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 button. Oh, if I have one, it would be worn out by now. Probably be all jammed. Michael says, Carrie, when you eat a piece of your birthday cake, remember all of your YouTube family. Okay? I don't have a cake. Don't want a cake. But I always remember my YouTube family. Robert Mortensen has a BIOS update problem with a Lenovo laptop. And this is what Lenovo support is for. You should not ask complete strangers on the internet for very specific manufacturer support advice when that manufacturer is in business and exists to answer the question for free. If you go to Lenovo's support site, they usually are forums that you can sign up for free. Place your question in the forum, and you will probably have an answer that is accurate within a day or two. I think you will find better consistency with a question that's specific, direct from the manufacturer. Did I put screws in the optical drive? No, I haven't done that, but I will. Beto Chavez says, what are we doing besides replying to people? Hey, what are you guys doing besides socializing? Like, are you getting anything done? Man, you're the life of the party. I bet when you show up, everybody's like, yay! Beto Chavez is here. Stop socializing now. Get back to work. God forbid. Don't socialize. It's YouTube. The whole point of YouTube is to interact. If you don't want to interact and you want to be passive, that's what TV is for. Wayne Lawrence says, happy birthday, Carrie, and thanks for another great stream today. Thank you, Wayne. Stephen Bernstein, it's good to see you in there. And who else do we have in there? Jacob J. Chevy Arthur, Matt Power. Good to see everybody today. It's great. Have I crossed 2 hours? Oh, I crossed 2 hours 17 minutes ago. I lost track of time. That never happens. I was like 25 years old yesterday. All right, guys, I don't see any other questions coming in. So I appreciate the interaction. I appreciate the questions. And even if my answers weren't what you wanted to hear, I hope that you will consider what I said for the benefit of everybody involved, of any future questions that you become, that when you're phrasing your question to a complete stranger who doesn't know you, that you provide information that would not otherwise be assumed or would be assumed incorrectly, negating the helpfulness of the answer, right? So I want to provide you with the best answer for you. And oftentimes that means if I'm not provided the question, the reason for the question, or the goal of the question, then I have to ask you questions back to better understand what it is you're trying to achieve. And so maybe think about that when you're asking anybody a question about anything. Start with what you're trying to achieve. And instead of directing the person to provide you the answer you want, you don't know the answer you want. That's why you're asking the question. So if you explain to somebody what it is you're trying to achieve, then that person can use their brain to solve that and say, here's a way or a couple of ways that you can accomplish that goal. But if you're asking questions and working your way randomly around a map, when all you're trying to do is go on a map, you're trying to get from Phoenix to Houston. And your question is, hey, does the I-10 connect to the 270? I don't know why. Well, I'm in Phoenix and I'm trying to get to Houston. But why are you getting on the 270? Well, don't I need to get on the 270? No. Well, how would I go from Phoenix to Houston then in the most efficient way? Oh, now I get your question. Let me show you a map. See, it's completely different where you were looking for a specific answer and working your way towards a goal that you didn't express what your goal was. And your questions were based on an incorrect foundation. So anyway, it's something to consider. I think it's more beneficial to the person asking, and it's more beneficial to the person answering. There's less miscommunication. But I appreciate the questions, and it's a great opportunity to learn. And like I said, even the fast versus intact mode, I can't give you a specific answer. So I don't know everything, but there are reasons behind why I choose those modes, and I will stick with default modes in order to get the end results I want. And as long as I get those end results, I rarely go back and wonder why. But it's a valid question. It's just one I never had any reason to pursue. So I'm sure we'll see some comments in the chat about it. I'm sure somebody will explain it, and I appreciate that. Paul O'Brien says 85 pounds, 62p is 107 US dollars. Yeah, but is British minimum wage equal to US minimum wage? Is British rent costs and cost of living equal to US cost? I mean, if we're just comparing the value of a dollar versus a pound, how does that relate to how much people make? How does that relate to how much it costs to live? How does that relate? I think you're sort of oversimplifying that you're supposedly paying more for a product when in fact you may be making more per capita per citizen than US residents do. There's a lot of different factors involved in product pricing and money valuation that, apart from foreign exchange currency trading for profit, there are other factors to be considered to determine what's fair and what's a ripoff. For example, a British gallon of gas is more money than a US gallon of gas by far. But part of the reason is because the British use an imperial gallon. So it's a bigger gallon than a US gallon. So why would you think it would cost the same? Then, of course, there's other aspects, taxes, in which part of the US you're comparing the price of gas to. Buying a gallon of gas in San Francisco is very expensive. Buying a gallon of gas in Oklahoma, not so much. And I know they don't sell it necessarily in gallons in Europe or in the UK. And I know it's definitely more expensive, but it may not be as extreme. Glenn's Music says, I'm glad I can tear your brain down today. It's not hard. It's not a challenge. I do like to, look, if I don't have an answer, I at least would like to point you to where you can find the answer. And of course, lots of intelligent people in the chat room have answers I don't have too. So don't just think of me as the sole source of information. I didn't make this stuff up. I had to learn it somewhere too. I didn't come out of the womb just like, give me a keyboard, I'm ready to go. We've all, we all learn this stuff, and we learn at our different paces at different speeds and different interests that, obviously something that interests you more, you'll learn more from because you're interested. I hated history class and I hated social sciences, and I didn't learn much from them because I didn't want to be there. And I don't think knowing those would be beneficial to me. So no regrets. That's the tattoo where there's a misspelling and no regrets. I love that. No regrets. Is there a Discord? No, we had a Discord server up for about a week, and the trolls made sure to abuse it to the point where it was no longer anything I wanted my name associated with. It was vulgar, rude, inconsiderate, and dominated by losers. And it ruined it for everybody else. So I've removed the Discord server. If you guys want to make a Discord server and hang out, go ahead. Just don't put my name on it. Lance says, my sister moved from the UK to the USA and said things are way cheap in the US. I guess it depends what, her average salary was, what her cost of living was, and where in the US she went. When Corey Fruitman from Instant House Calls stayed with me, he comes in from Toronto and he saw how inexpensive beer is. And he said, in Canada, there's a minimum price on beer that you cannot go below that price per bottle. It's required by law. It cannot be sold for less than this price per bottle of beer. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know such a thing existed. So he saw, beer at Walmart for, a few dollars, and he couldn't believe how inexpensive it was. And we pulled into a gas station that's got like 40 gas pumps. Well, maybe not 40, but 48, 12. And it had about 8 lanes, and each lane has, two sides, and each pump has, well, no, each pump will have one handle, but on each side. Anyway, he couldn't believe the size of the gas station. And I said, well, Corey, do you see any available pumps? There was one available pump. I'm like, that's why the gas station's so big. If you had 2 pumps, we'd be parked out in the street waiting for our turn. He said, we don't have that in Toronto. And I'm like, well, you probably don't have lines to buy gas, or you would have that in Toronto. So it's kind of a balance, counterbalance. And if you're comparing the price of living in London to comparing the price of living in Phoenix, it's going to be a lot cheaper in Phoenix. But cheaper doesn't mean better. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. There, we got about 2.5 hours into this. So what I'm going to try and do between now and the next time I see you is get the cable management done, get the DVD drive screwed in and powered up with, power and data, get the front fan hooked up. I will uninstall TimeSpy. I don't think Mike wants that. And then I should be able to give you one more video of the build complete, all the cable management done, everything's hooked up and working. And put the side panels on it and take it over to FedEx because Mike needs it shipped before Thursday. So that's my deadline. If I don't get it out before Thursday, I might have to sit on it a couple more months before I can ship it. So anyway, that's what's going on with my plans for that. And then we're going to get back to the Be Quiet case back there. That's a repair. That needs to be tested to see how the cooler's functioning. And then I've got to hook all the drives back up. He's got 4 drives in there that have to be, I got to figure out which one's the boot drive, 2 are RAID 0 drive. So I have to figure that out. Once I've determined that the cooler's going to be okay and everything's functional, I will hook his drives back up. And then next to that one over there is the Fantex. That's my own little personal, ridiculous, over-the-top birthday build. And I still have the graphics card to install in there, plus all the testing and everything to do. That's ridiculous, the RTX 2080 Ti. And then I'll have the cable management on that. And I may make that the new streamer because this AMD system is really, really getting me angry. I'm so frustrated with its performance and its finickiness. This is the 3900X. And I think it needs a wipe and a reinstall. And if I'm going to do all that work, I'd rather just start with that platform over there so I don't have to constantly baby it. The other AMD system that's a streamer, that's a 2400G. That one's running no problems, totally fine. So I'm going to stick with what I know. And I know my Intel systems all run without that finickiness, without the RAM compatibility issues, sometimes they start, sometimes it doesn't, which I'm suffering from on the streamer. And I'm sure it's also a RAM compatibility problem. So if I go to Intel, I don't have to figure that out. I just want to be lazy, get it done, and move on. And then after that one, maybe we can finish up the Xenos build after 5 years. Oh, and then there's two birthday builds coming up, which are just stupid. They're absolutely impractical and stupid, but I think they're going to get a lot of views. And I don't know what I'm going to do with these two systems, these two birthday builds that I haven't told you anything about. They are impractical, they're big, they're stupid, and I don't want them. What I want is to make a video with them. Once I'm done with the video, I do not want those systems. But they will be so big, I don't know that it will be even possible to ship them, at least via FedEx. I don't think FedEx makes a box big enough. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. It's all for the views, man. It's all for the views. Thanks, you guys, for watching. I appreciate it very much. Thanks to everybody who's supported me over the years, and of course today with the contributions from Winston Ang Lu and Abdul Azim Patel, Jean-Marc Barrera, George Z, a couple more from Winston, and Mike Yazzie, Michael Dane, a couple others from George Z as well, and Kevin Arsenal, Gil Garcia, Dave Ruger, Frankie B. Thanks for all of your continued generosity. Glenn's Music, I appreciate your contribution and asking questions and participating. That means a lot to me. Bordura Catalans, good to see you again, and thank you for your contribution. Robert DeMont and Solo, as well as Daniel Pexton and Richard Bogan, Rick Hubbard, David Griswold, Jeremy Kramer, Michael Dane, thank you very much for, again, your contributions, your participation as always. Paul O'Brien, Rick Hubbard, and the first contribution today was from Rain One Full. So thanks, you guys, again. I do appreciate taking my dependence away from sponsors and allowing me to speak my mind without worry of repercussion. So again, that's only made possible with your support. And to all my friends in blue, I appreciate the I appreciate that you're looking out for me in the chat room from people looking to stir things up. That means a lot to me, so I can focus, being in the frame and working, and not so much on policing the chat, which shouldn't be necessary. But the world's filled with a lot of sad people. But that doesn't have to be us. So thank you for being a part of this amazing community, for joining me today, for sharing my birthday with me. And I will see you all again very, very soon. Tomorrow is soon, right? So we'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.